Welcome to the Daily Soul Bytes Show. This is season 3. I am your host, Bola Abimbola. This is the show where we will continue to feature expert guests, authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs from the fields of spirituality, psychology, and leadership to share their insights for the expansion of collective consciousness. And today I have a very special guest. Her name is Rebecca Arnold, all the way from Boston. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be with you, Bola.
And I'll read a bit about your bio before we start, Rebecca. Rebecca Arnold is a professional certified executive and leadership coach. She's the founder of Root Coaching and Consulting LLC, a holistic leadership coaching firm for ambitious professionals. She's known as a straight talking, big hearted coach. Her best selling book, The Rooted Renegade, Transform Within, Disrupt the Status Quo, and Unleash a Legacy, shares the path to holistic success for ambitious professionals to live and lead more joyfully. That is so powerful. Thank you so much, Rebecca. How did you get to this place where you are working with ambitious, the brightest of folks to actually enable them to live more joyful lives? How did you get to this place?
Yeah. So thanks for asking. It has been a journey, as most of us have. I started out, so I'm actually a lawyer by training and was really committed to working in education equity. And I started my career at working at the US Department of Education, had my kids, did consulting for education nonprofits, and then really like re-enter the workforce robustly and found my dream job. I mean, I was working on education policy in an area that mattered so much to me. And it was like doing the work that felt like the culmination of my training and passion, and burnt myself out horrifically. And I'm sure you've heard lots of people have that type of experience. And I think it's really common when we're doing impact driven work and care deeply about what we're up to, that we can lose ourselves in the process. And that is a part of what happened to me. I think there were a number of factors, like any more complex thing that happens to us. But what was really kind of earth shaking for me about it is that I had this complete vacuum of purpose. I was like, I just had the job that I had been working toward. And now who am I? What do I want? What's important to me? And I went into a process of really deep inquiry after that and came to coaching, which it was funny because I had studied psychology in college. I thought I might be a therapist. And I was deciding, like, do I want to be a therapist or do I want to work on education, policy, and equity? And I went that route. And coaching feels like homecoming, really. I get to do the work that is deep and transformative and supports people on system change in education, in healthcare, in academia, in these really interesting fields. And so it's a culmination of a lot of these skills and my passions and interests, and also my commitment to us doing life differently in a way that really allows us to live into our passions and be more balanced as humans.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Rebecca. Now, it's
Mhm.
always so interesting when I meet guests, and I find that there is always that period of time when we try to really run before we are walking. And it's all
Mhm.
as it needs
Mhm.
to be. All is as it needs to be, because that is a time that the universe calls us to serve deeper, to actually go deeper
Mhm.
to serve. And I
Mhm.
love and then
Mhm.
we sometimes end up having 3, 4 different careers,
Yep.
at the end of the day, because we are,
Mhm.
and nothing actually is wasted. I don't think anything
No.
is wasted. I think whatever we are learning before we hit that bump, and there's sometimes so many bumps in lives. It's never just
Mhm.
one. It's never just the one dark night of the soul. We end up having quite a bit. Um,
Yes.
but it's for me, I think it's knowing that um, nothing is wasted, and it's always
Mhm.
about how we are bringing something from some timelines to another timeline, and
Mhm.
really beginning
Mhm.
to that word joyful is so key. Really beginning to
Mhm.
embody more joy in that journey
Hmm.
as we shift careers, as we shift timelines, as we shift
Hmm.
gears, as we transform to
Hmm.
actually embody more joy. So I really resonate with it. And I'd love to hear a bit about your book, actually, your book
Yeah.
that you read. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So this is, I think about this book as my love letter to the world and to coaching. Like I have um, really put everything I know at the moment. I'm sure I will know other things, but everything I do with clients into the book. And it's really interesting. It has been a really transformative journey for myself, writing this book and publishing it. And it started, so it was an interesting process for me. It started during the earliest phase of the pandemic. So March 2020 here in the US, we started like school shutdown. And so my family and I went to Maine in the US, and I started recording these videos on live videos on Instagram, on Facebook with coaching content that I thought could really support people as we were all grappling with this completely crazy situation we were now navigating. And I think that some of the hardest parts of that early phase were clearly not knowing and the fear and all of that. And for those of us who were very fortunate to not be in the frontline positions and were at home, to be sometimes for the first time with lots of time with ourselves and with our loved ones and confronting the things that maybe we had been running from for a long time, but hadn't really looked at. And so I was hearing this from my clients. I was seeing it in friends and family, like all these things we were all grappling with simultaneously with this global grappling we were doing. And over a few months, I realized that the videos actually were kind of formed the scaffold of a book. And the book walks people through. So I think what is happening for a lot of us is there's so much noise and like filling of this deep internal yearning we have that we can't quite name or articulate. So we go on vacations, we try self care, we like shake up our jobs, we try different relationships. And I think what actually a lot of our seeking boils down to are these three aspects of our life. The first is, so I call this is the concept of rooted peace that my book is built around. With the first piece is like knowing how to calm our nervous systems. Our world is so chaotic, and we operate on top of that and have this reactivity we often bring. So, if we know how to calm our nervous systems and really get back to our bodies, our immediate environment, we have so much more resourcefulness and capacity. And I think if we don't know how to do that, we're kind of like numbing ourselves to what's really happening. The
Mm.
second piece is like existential piece. So how are we doing work that lights us up? Are we aligned with our values? Do we know, are we making choices with more intention or are we being reactive? So the book kind of walks through what are some practices to cultivate more of that. And then
Mm.
the third piece is component is relational piece, our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with other people. And I think about these three lenses as none of them will ever be perfect. And that's fine. We're humans, we're messy, and that's okay. But when something is off in our life, we often can't quite put our finger on it. And so my hope was by laying out this framework, people would have a place to go to look at what's kind of off and then what to start doing about it.
Mm.
So that's what the book really breaks down and walks people through.
Oh, that's beautiful. And where can the book be found, Rebecca?
So it's anywhere you buy your book. So Amazon, I have it on my website. You can find, like, if you Google The Rooted Renegade, you will find it. Um, and
Okay.
I'm just delighted to have it. I love watching it travel across the globe. Like I've imbued so much intention in this book. It's like beautiful to me to think about these ideas and practices and exercises and all of that spreading. So it brings me great delight when I
Do you have
hear,
a copy with it there to show us?
oh yeah, it's actually, I just did a talk, so it has some post-it notes in it, but
Oh, the
that's what
rooted.
it looks like.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Lovely.
It's
I love
interesting
that.
because,
Yes, carry
oh,
on.
please.
Carry on.
I just love this image. It's so interesting. Like people, it's almost like a Rorschach test for people. They see so many different things in it in this cover. And I love it. It's spurred some really interesting conversations with people.
And it's really interesting because when we come to understand that there is a part of us that is not about survival, that is not about fear, that is really about
hmm
peace and higher perspectives such as
hmm
forgiveness, unconditional love,
hmm
of um, of resonance, of resilience. These are higher perspectives that are not about fear and those kind of survival instincts. We can come
hmm
to align much easier because we only align to what we are familiar with. So Daily Soul Bytes really increases an awareness of these different perspectives within us to allow us to align more and more for our best outcomes. So yes, I think 2020
hmm
brought out a lot of authors, a lot of creativity within all of us. So that's
hmm
really,
hmm
how do you help your clients with your rooted piece? Because I love how you described it with the book. Is that the
hmm
same way you work with them in your sessions or it's different?
So it varies. I really work with folks, like we work with what is in the moment. My coaching is very organic. I don't kind of walk people through a standard process because I don't think it's actually that as helpful for people when, to walk through a process that's not alive for you, working with what's alive for you in the moment. There's so much, I mean, you said resonance. There's so much resonance and opportunity to embody change when we're working with what is right now instead of the theory or a framework. And so I kind of hold the framework in my mind and think about when a client is grappling with something, let's say they're stuck and don't know what their next move is in their career, and they're super high performing and they're feeling like they haven't really lived out the impact that's in them. Well, then we'll look at some ways into their legacy. What's the legacy they want to leave? And how do they
Mm,
start to connect with that through visualization? And in their bodies, even, where does the legacy live within them? And that's like often for my clients who are hyper intellectuals, that's a strange question at the beginning. And then they start to get me because when they start to speak to, if I'm working with a physicist, right? Like, well, I want to have this huge impact on the field and how we look at particles and light and all of that. And I ask them when they're speaking to that, where they feel it in their bodies, they start to connect with the embodied sense of their purpose or their legacy. And so if another client is coming and they're like, I just can't, I have these papers I would need to write and get out there, and I'm really grappling with sitting down. Okay, let's take a look at the mindsets that are swirling as you're trying to write. And what's your relationship with yourself? How do you think about success? Like, what matters to you about the fingerprint of your career? And so then we'll look at some existential piece components from the book. So it's almost like I'm holding all of that context of like all the exercises, all the experiences I've had. I mean, you spoke to how nothing is wasted, and I really feel that way too. And I bring that to coaching, right? So,
mm,
how have other people navigated this challenge? How have I seen you as my client grow in a similar way in a different kind of realm? So I bring all of that to coaching. So my coaching is very it really marries kind of the mindset component, but also the embodied piece or embodied component, because I feel like that's how we actually get change that lasts
mm,
instead of like, okay, yeah, I've shifted my mindset on this one thing in this moment, but I don't feel it in my DNA.
mm, mm, mm. Oh, I love that. I love that. I definitely feel that sometimes we do need to understand the heart-mind connection. And I know you
hmm
talk about
hmm
that quite a
Yeah.
bit. There is definitely a need for us to shift that really soulful part of us, because at the end of the
hmm
day, we are spirit beings. And
hmm
when we shift the mind, we sometimes forget that really the core of us, the themes we are exploring are from the soul. The themes we are
hmm
exploring are from the heart. No matter what it looks like, no matter how rational and logical and controlling we want to make things, there is a
hmm
part of us, that unknown part. And it's difficult to engage the heart, isn't it, Rebecca?
hmm
Because it's an
hmm
unknown for most of us,
hmm
for many of us, and we've been conditioned from when we are born to really try to look at things in a logical way. What makes
hmm
sense? How can I
hmm
please comparing ourselves to others. And each of us is an
Hmm.
infinite piece of intelligence. We are infinite
Hmm.
beings of infinite intelligence. So we cannot compare ourselves. Comparing ourselves to anybody else is a waste of time. So I love the way you really connect with the heart and the mind. But tell us a bit more about that, about how you
Hmm.
connect, how you support your clients to connect the mind to the heart as they work
Hmm.
with. Also, if your coaching is, I love that it's organic. Is it like an 8 month program or a 6 weeks program? So something about how what people can
Yeah.
expect.
Yeah. So I work with people for a minimum of 6 months, because I feel like that's the length of time it takes to have changes really take hold. I don't know if you've had this experience, but I often find that people will have a quick growth trajectory when they start coaching or doing any kind of transformative work. And then sometimes there's a backsliding as you start to wrestle with integration. And
Mm,
then you kind of have changes really take hold. So it's important to me. I mean, at the end of the day, like I want my clients to have huge impacts. And so like I am committed to working with them for like no less than that amount of time. Um, and that at our sessions we like really get into it, right, like whatever's happening for them. And so I work with a lot of academics and other like hyper intellectuals. And so what can be really challenging is that their intellect has gotten them to where they are to be successful. And when they come to coaching, it's often because the challenge they're facing in that moment lies at the edge of their intellect. It's like they've tried to think themselves to a solution and it's not working. And often that is because there's something in the heart, in the spirit, in the body that is impeding the integration of all of those. And so, what I
mm,
mean by that is there might be a heartbreak in their work, even that they haven't confronted, or they're hanging on to some shame about an experience they had
mm,
in their work life or in their personal relationships, or they haven't even asked themselves lately, and by lately I might mean in the last decade, what they want and what lights them up and how they want to be showing up, and some of those deeper questions that are the questions of integration and alignment.
mm,
And so oftentimes I like to use a visual of like a giant brain on these tiny little legs. Like that's how many of us operate. And as you well know, there is so much intelligence that is in our bot coursing through our bodies all the time. And so oftentimes when I'm working with intellectuals, like I need to really make that bridge. And so the bridge of like what the impact of the heart and the body has on the intellect in order to kind of like start taking the first steps toward really opening up this whole area. So I often do a practice where I'll say to somebody, okay, so what I want you to do is, so we'll start this in an early session of our work together. I want you to just like hunch your body and like really like come into yourself. And now I want you to feel enthusiastic about the project you're working on from this place. And they look at me like I've completely lost it. And of course, you can't feel excitement when your body is in that closed off tight posture. So then I'll just say, okay, let's just shake it off and loosen up a little bit, bounce in your chair a little bit, have a smile on your face, broaden your shoulders. Now let's try to access enthusiasm about a project from here. And they're like, oh, okay. This is so much easier to access enthusiasm. And we did not change a single thought. All we did was change your body positioning and posture. And I'm mirroring that for you. And that is often the first blush of them starting to understand this connection and the power that exists in their body to change their day to day reality. So that's just an example of something that we might do together.
because this is about self-awareness. It's
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness, how the work you're doing is really enabling them to become more aware of those feelings and sensations that
Mm-hmm.
already lie within, but they sometimes
Mm-hmm.
are buried because of what we have focused on. Because whatever we focus on is what expands. So I love
Mm-hmm.
that you
Mm-hmm.
are shifting that focus and increasing that self-awareness in order for us to be able to align with much
Mm-hmm.
more expansiveness
Hmm.
and joy,
Hmm.
and joy.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
not forget the joy.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, it's also like I often see people with so much like, so I've worked with physicians that carry a lot of unprocessed grief. And what ends up happening is they'll say, like, everything feels really flat. Like, it's hard for me to experience joy and enthusiasm and effervescence and like all of those delicious emotions that are the things that like really light us up as humans.
Mm,
And a part of what's happening is because there's all this unprocessed crap, we limit our range of emotional experience that we have access to. And so until we do some of that work to like clear things out, make peace with what has been, think about ourselves in ways that actually are supportive instead of beat ourselves up all day, we start to expand the emotional range so that we have more capacity to be with the really hard stuff and the really joyful stuff.
yes. Oh, that's powerful because joy requires compassion. It's
Hmm.
so interesting that
Hmm.
in order for us to really feel much, much lighter, to let go of those things that hold us down, we have to become much more compassionate. Compassionate cannot be a dirty word. It's got
Hmm.
to be something
Hmm.
that we embrace. So
Hmm.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for the work you do, Rebecca. And where can
Yeah,
people
of
find
course.
you when they want to connect with you?
Yeah. So therootedrenegade.com is where you can find all the information about the book and my coaching and lots of other tools and resources that are there as well.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Really nice to have you join me today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Bola.
And I'd like to thank my audience and invite you to grab a copy of Rebecca's book and also to grab a copy of my book, Daily Soul Bytes. So that this is really about expansion. This is about expansion of consciousness, to get us to a place of joy, get us to a place
Mhm.
of higher perspectives, so that we could really begin to embody and enjoy those best outcomes that we all seek. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I do look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Daily Soul Bytes Show. Bye bye.